Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast. We help people to combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective and positive actions. Today's guest is Darrin Charles. Darrin is a former NFL player working as an actor in Los Angeles whose vision is to create a community and curriculum for athletes transitioning from the game of sports to the game of life, bringing together a curated program with tools, resources, events, speakers, festivities, and experiences to ensure their acclimation, development, and success as they pursue their second, third, fourth dream and beyond. Darrin speaks to student athletes and pro athletes in transition to share his story, experiences, and the insight and knowledge he has acquired to empower others for their journey and they're currently on and about to enter. Darrin is here to engage with other curious, thoughtful, and like-minded leaders who share the same passion for life and bridge the gap with investment in life and continuous success. So please welcome to the show, Darrin Charles. Darrin, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Bob. I sincerely appreciate it. And thank you for that full bio. I know that's quite a mouthful. So
yeah, it's interesting though, because it's, I think, an area that seems to be forgotten about. And I think you do a good job of covering that. And what's interesting is it starts with the mindset, and you go into that, and we'll get into that in the interview in a little bit. But why don't you tell people about who you are and how you got to where you are? Because that's always interesting for people that don't know you.
Yeah. Well, I would say first and foremost, I'm a family guy. Everything that I've done throughout my life has really been either for my parents or my immediate family. And then from there, it really extends out into the community. How can I be of value? How can I create my own value for myself, but also within the world and the communities that I'm in? Mm-hmm. And I'd say there's this quality, this trait about me that my mother brought up just about 2 days ago on a phone call. And she said, you have this thing where you never give up. You'll stumble, you'll go through some challenges, but you always figure it out and you get back up and you end up much further along than where you had been before. So that's something I've been meditating on, thinking of more often the past couple of days. And yeah, I certainly think that's true. And I think a lot of people possess that as well. And in addition to all of that, I guess it's important to, again, be of service and be heart-led and offer your wisdom to the rest of your community. So I think the direction that I'm headed is a strong step in that direction.
Good. And I mean, that's big too, because, your previous experience being an athlete, a lot of times it's focused on what you do, your performance, and that turn around and focus on, oh, there's a rest of the world out there, if you will. That's a good aspect to be reminded of. Hey, there is more than just you in this world. And it seems like that was a good basis for you with your mother and telling you that reminder that you were probably raised that way, that, it's not just you in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, of course, we have all these disadvantages, right? Or perceived disadvantages as we're growing up. And of course, we know that life moves through these stages, and oftentimes, well, all the time, we're just simply not aware of what those stages look like until we progress through them. And I think that's why it's key for young people to always have someone that they, or something that they aspire to, but that they're inspired by somebody so they can make that connection with others. My mother did a wonderful job of just making sure that I said my pleases and thank yous, something that I always try to communicate to young people as well, because I think that's the bedrock foundation of appreciation and gratitude, which will eventually lead you further into your heart, more vulnerability, and allow kind of the rest of life to open up for you. But again, it's chapters and it's stages.
Yeah. And that's a great concept you mentioned there. Please and thank you. They're manners. Remember those in life. They will get you very far. And it could be as simple as smiling at somebody, holding a door. It doesn't take a whole lot. And that's the best part about some of those scenarios. Well, if we can, let's go into more about you. It's interesting because I was looking at some of your stuff on your website, your YouTube videos and so forth, and you go to the basis of reading. And let's hit on this because I think it's so important. I mean, you've read a plethora of books. I mean, he's reviewed Think and Grow Rich. You're looking at what was it? Atomic Habits by James Clark, The Green Light by Matthew McConaughey, and Limitless by James
Jim
Quick.
Quick. Jim Quick.
Yes, I just got that. I just bought that one.
Oh, you're
It
gonna
looked
love
really
that.
good. So
Yeah.
but how often are you reading these books and then you're giving a review? It's there's a plethora of them on there. If you can't check out his information, we'll get that out to you. But really good stuff. So how often do you read these books, and the messages that you're giving are, if you could share that more with people?
Yeah, absolutely. So to preface that, it had been some years since I completed my sports days.
Mhm.
And as I was acclimating to the real world and trying to bring my skills up to pace with where everybody else was more or less at, right, because of the dedication to sports, once that transition came into place and I started to settle in more, I began to realize more and more how ill-equipped I was for life, that I needed to begin to seek resources to help me further along. And I think that tied directly into my innate drive to be successful and the willingness to put myself through, I guess you could say, the pressure cooker to
Right.
refine myself. And so the book club began with my interest in devouring books and realizing that these resources are first of all they're tangible and you can apply them very quickly. And that ties into, for instance, the Jim Quick book. I mean, for those who, particularly athletes as well, who didn't dedicate themselves to academics or enhancing their brain or realizing that their brain is far more capable than the pattern of training or pattern of operation that we've been using in our life. So it's kind of that book's a chance to revisit that, and it empowers you and shows you how you can learn quicker, tangibly, right in the moment. So I started devouring books like that about 2 years ago, and sometimes it would be a book a day. And I thought, well, okay, if I have this information, and as things progressed into more social media and outward facing, I thought, let me just put this up here, talk about it, and perhaps somebody else will find value. And so as the past year and a half has evolved, it's been basically a book a month. I initially started with putting some videos up there just to give a little tease, a little taste of what can be expected in the book, something that I learned and applied, and just to really guide people in that direction. And now it's more so evolved to a space where I continue doing about a book a month. Actually, It is a book a month. So I'll select one beforehand, 30 days to dive into it. I've gotten really good at that now. Not everybody can start at that speed, understandably, but I encourage you to start with maybe 5 pages. And then, so now it's just taken shape into a platform that I can put in front of others, athletes in transition, other men who want to, get a faster start and a sturdier foundation to their lives.
Great. And that's so important because, as you mentioned in one of your reviews, it's like we're really not taught in our schools how to learn. We're taught to basically pass a test or pass a state requirement. And that's okay. But like you said, there's so much more outside of that people can pick up that interest you. And that all of a sudden you'll be so into it that you'll read the whole book in like you said, sometimes in one night. I have the book sitting next to me that really triggered that for me after college. And it was one of those scenarios I got a flyer in one of my bills and saw this ad for this book. And I've got a
dying to know which one, Bob.
Yeah, it's Yes, You Can. There it is. Achieve Financial Independence by James Stower. James Stower was the founder of 20th Century Investment Fund, now American Century. And he wrote this book, and I got a flyer about it. And it was interesting because I got this book and I started reading it, and it was about how to build your money, how to grow your money. And this was after college. I mean, I was burned out from reading books and studying and all that. And that was the last thing I wanted to do. But I got this book, and I couldn't put it down that night. I mean, it was 2:30 in the morning, and I'm finishing this book, and I was so just enlightened and just so excited. And that's what we need to teach everybody, I think, is that opportunity we have in a book. It can take you places. It can show you things that spark your interest, that you'll dig deeper in, that you'll grow from. And
100%.
I think that's a great concept that people forget, is we can still learn even after formal education.
Yeah, I think it has a perception to it, learning, and a lot of that is because it's forced upon us either by our public school systems or private or parents or whatever that may be. And then we kind of stumble into habits, and then we're more or less kind of sorted in terms of, well, you excel here or you're excelling here. And then, naturally you get steered towards your interests. And I think when that period comes to an end, I think and I myself as well, and as you said, everybody's a bit not wanting to continue the reading and learning process, but so it's a mindset shift in that you can now move towards the areas of interest that you have, or the areas of interest of need. And so it's identifying where your needs are, and then finding that resource. And then you'll passionately dive into it. Then you'll say, oh my God, this is transforming my life right now. And you'll want to devour it. And then you can apply it. And one other thing I want to touch on to that point is, it's a different type of learning in that you're using that voice inside your own head.
Yeah.
And it's that voice that you're dictating what's on that page. And so it transforms your mind much differently than hearing somebody else's voice, or even watching visual images, or, movies and things like that. I think the ability to read transforms the mind possibly at, one of the best paces from my experience.
That's a good point, because you don't hear that Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 in your ear. You hear your own voice, in your head, reading to yourself, and it does make a difference. And you can, ask yourself questions. What about this? What about that? And you start to make notes, and then you're, going over concepts audibly, visually, and kinesthetically. And that's three biggest parts of learning right there. And so, there's some big advantages to that. So, well, with that idea of the transition from the NFL and into, if you will, a second life, or, any sport, do you find this to be a good stepping stone for a lot of people? The idea of the books and the reading club?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, as we know, you have to have the desire there to want to grow. So you're going to have to figure that out, and hopefully that's there. And then you got to know where to look. And fortunately, there's public libraries everywhere, and there's tons of resources. And now, of course, we can Google and search for all of that stuff. So that's a great starting point. And as far as the reading component, you kind of have to get down off your pedestal a little bit, right? Because you're going at any transition in life is going to take a reevaluation, reassessment, and more or less a pivot into a new direction. And so when that happens, when that big first dream ends, or this something detrimental happens and it moves your life into another direction, one of the best things you can do is find a resource that can either help you in transition or get you closer to that distant goal that could be in the future. So for instance, for me, when I transitioned from the NFL, frankly, I was lost. I didn't know who I was, what I wanted to do, and I was unsure about all of the skills that I possessed. So what I needed to do was pivot and more or less go on an adventure. I needed to discover what my interests are, what is my personality, right? In a fuller expression, without somebody knowing, oh, my jersey number or my 15 years of experience in these other areas. So, and then with that, whether it's getting additional schooling or reading, as you just mentioned, it's really about diving in and taking something that's so large, like the second dream or the third and fourth, like I like to talk about, and gathering that information and make it more tangible. So an example would be, if you have a whale, right? You don't eat the whole whale at once. You got to do it one bite at a time. Right. And that's how we need to start looking at life and our transitions, and being patient with ourselves and having the faith to actively take the steps forth. So reading is a tool that you can control, and it's right there in front of you. Yeah.
I appreciate you mentioning the public libraries too, because I remember, I would travel a lot, and I'd go to local used bookstores to find copies of different books, or the public library. It's free. Remember, it's free. It's a library card. It's very simple to get one.
And they have digital tools and audiobooks, and you name it. So
yeah, you can
it's
go
unbelievable.
online. They got websites for it. It's like, come on, you can do this. But it's some great resources to remind people of. Now, it's interesting too, because it seems like it bases off the mindset. because you have a certain discipline when you're in a sport. It's very focused, doing certain actions a certain way and getting those, fine tuning those better and better and better. And then you shift, and all of a sudden here's life, and
Mm.
it's throwing everything at you, and you don't have time to fine tune anything, let alone know what. Like you said, you seem a little bit lost. Did your mindset? I mean, like you said, you had to find yourself. So was that a mindset focus, a skills focus? How was that transition for you?
Yeah, Bob, I think you know as well as anybody, absolutely a mindset. And that's going to be your most important skill, tool, resource in your life, particularly as an athlete when your body might fail on you, which I certainly had over the years, surgeries and things like that. So, without question, mindset. But there's some other tools that are there that can assist as well. Finding a supportive environment. If you're saying those pleases and thank yous, as we mentioned earlier, hopefully you haven't burnt those bridges. And so you can use those people as resources as you continue to move forward in life. And it's realizing that, you're no longer perhaps the center of the universe.
Yeah.
And, to be an excellent athlete or more or less the master in a lot of areas, you're going to have a belief in yourself that you are that person.
Right.
And you can match that with your heart. And sometimes that comes later on in life. But I think in the early stages when, athletics and things are all it's important just to introduce and soften some of the edges in the way you interact in your communities and the world around you. So, without a doubt, mindset. Right. So read them books.
Yeah. And they will help you with that. I mean, there's there's biographies, there's stories, there's fiction, there's all kinds of things. What's your interest? I talk to kids a lot of times. I mention that too. It's like, read the books that interest you. I know you got to get through the stuff in school too, but if you're interested in mechanics, look at it. You go online, look up things about that interest you, so you have that avenue. What's out there, what's available, what some opportunities you may have, because you're not always showing them in some environments.
To the point of the mindsets, we'll find commonly over time the truth that competence is what separates you from other people. So the more you can have specific yet broad understandings of multiple tasks, the more you'll be capable of living an independent, full life.
Right. Okay.
So
good. Well, what's some of the other books you've read and so forth and information? I mean, it seems like it's a lot of encouragement, self-motivation, goal setting. What are the genres and so forth that you read and that you help describe on your show?
Sure. Yeah. So on the book club, Darrin's Book Club is the handle on Instagram. I know we'll get to that later, but it predominantly deals with nonfiction. So it's straightforward, baseline, kind of archetypical stories of how to navigate the world and certain aspects of it. So it could be anywhere from in relationship to how to engage with your finances, or it could be spiritual in nature as well, or a combination of all the above. And the reason why I'm headed in that route is because, again, as I said, it's when you feel unequipped, you want to get to the baseline, the very roots of how best to handle a situation, right? It's like taking the first step, right, to mastery. And so grabbing the baseline, just like an athlete, right? That first rep, and then you continue on. So that's the direction that I'm headed. And I also flirt with the idea of, going into fiction books, partly because I'm in the entertainment space. Right. And so I'll be reading everything from history of movies and studying film and, film classes and things like that. But as far as the book club, you can go there, select a book, and there's plenty of them there. And obviously it'll continue on. And then you can directly apply those tools, Jim Quick being one of them.
Yeah, that was a very interesting session you had on that you described that. Thought you described the 10 10 skills that he talks about in the books. I'm looking forward to that. So appreciate it. I'll definitely be following more of that because there's some interesting books in there. For those of
Thanks
you
for
that are
checking
looking
that
for
out.
next book to read, check it out. And again, we'll have those websites here in a minute. Just, I'm curious too, with the type of person you are and have become, does your faith have a strong presence in what you're doing and how you're doing it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of blind spots in life and challenging spots. And there are times when you'll rely on your faith more than others, and sometimes it's not always there for you. And that's okay to have some doubt. But fighting for faith is what will help you move through the periods where you're not feeling as though there's a hand or a guidance in your life.
Right.
I consider myself to be spiritual, although I grew up in a specific denomination. And it's important for me to have routines where I feel grounded and connected to my source,
Right.
as I'll call it. So yeah, you can't do it without it.
No, there's definitely a higher power that guides us. And I think that's a great reminder for people because it's, we can, there's just certain things that we can rely on that for. And that's a comforting thought. There's hope in that. So
That's
I definitely
incredible, yeah.
appreciate that. We mentioned in your bio about different programs. So tell us a little bit about that. What type of programs do you set up and want to set up more with people for what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm engaging with schools in my community, men's groups.
Okay.
And that's something that I've been doing since really my high school days.
Okay.
And that was talking to either my teammates or when I was in college, talking to my former high school team when the coaches would bring the teams over. And I've done a little bit of coaching on the side. And really it's imparting just the knowledge and the wisdom, specifically when, the kids are looking at you. And of course you get to a certain age and you have to let them know what your accolades are, right?
Yeah.
Just so they can make the connection and you can have that mutual validation there. But yeah, and then in terms of the programs, it's really getting in there and sharing my story, and it's being vulnerable, which is a key component to life, and also that transitioning for athletes to, be willing to put themselves out there and try something new. And so I'm looking to put together a digital space where there's quick tips sheets, books that I point to, including the book club where I'm at, resources, engaging with athletes and former athletes who are moving into the speaking space or have testimonies, getting them there to show a vision for the future for the athletes in transition. And I will say one person that I really look towards is, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's certainly had a storied career, and he's also in the entertainment space as well. So certainly hope to call him a friend one day. So.
Yeah. That's something. Well, and it's a reminder of the path that, it is hard. There's going to be times where it's, there's good, there's up, there's down, and we have our faith, we have our abilities to help get us through that. I think that's important for people to realize that and keep growing. Always continue to grow, because it just benefits you as you grow. You project that out to the world, and our world becomes a better place.
Yes, 100%.
And that's a great thing to be able to do, is share that with our world. So great job with that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Well, where can people find out more about your information and your website, and where they can get a hold of you?
Yes, my website is darrincharles.com. That's DARRIN Charles.com. Instagram probably would be a main point of contact, although you can keep up with me on the website. So that's Darrin.Charles. And then there's the book club, Darrin's Book Club. And feel free to reach out. I invite anybody who's looking for resources, who has some questions, anyone who's going through transition, and of course, anyone who wants to support me, I'll happily support them as well. And certainly for those who would like me to engage with them, come and speak in front of their kids or their community or their school.
And it's always a great thing, because it gives the students, I think, that insight of what it takes to get there. And then, oh, by the way, there is another side of the up. and you've got to be ready for that too. Like, it's life. It is life. We get older, we can't do everything we used to do when we were 18.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's a reality.
Yeah, a quick, very brief story. I remember in high school, we got called into this into our gymnasium, our auditorium, for this awards ceremony, more or less. Somebody was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and they were this storied athlete. And so they were just this name that you would kind of hear in the hallways. And by that point, I was distinctly an athlete. But I didn't quite know who this individual was. And so they came in, they gave their speech in front of everybody. And I remember sitting there thinking, of course, the entire school's there, but I remember sitting there thinking, that seems so far away from where I'm currently at right now. And I wonder what that must be like. And I would have never imagined that several years later that I would have been invited back to have that very same conversation,
Right.
And see the impact of what seemingly wasn't meaningful in that moment be something that I could arrive to tangibly. So I think there's real opportunity for the individual as well as schools and leaders to just simply get that exposure out to kids. I think that's very important. So
yeah, a reality check for them. So
yeah,
that's
things
great.
can happen sooner than you imagine.
Oh, definitely. And it's that drive they have within them is what guides that. I think that's important for kids to understand, is so many times they just want to sit back and think things are going to be given to them. It doesn't work that way. You got to work for it.
Right. And that's why I distinctly feel that athletes are uniquely capable of being successful in life, because there's that outward drive, there's that willpower, there's that willingness to go through challenges and breaking points. But again, there's this vulnerability element and a softer reintroduction back into the stream of life. And I think with the courage to do that, I think, they'll be well prepped for even more success.
Well, great job. Continue what you're doing. Darrin, thank you so much for being a guest on the Encouragement Engineering Podcast. I really appreciate what you offer, what you're giving our communities and, our future leaders. So thanks you so for much, what Bob. You're doing.
Wonderful conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And you keep up the great work.